Hey, I want to welcome you to another installment episode, whatever you want to call it, of Beyond the Table, where we kind of take conversations, ideas, and thoughts at a table, have an exchange, and hopefully you take them and share them with others. And so if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, I want you to hit like, subscribe, or share it with somebody else. And today I have Brent Williams with me today. He's here on our team, part of our staff, and we're going to kind of flip the script. Typically, I do all the interviewing and talk to people and whatnot, but today we're going to flip the script, and he's actually going to ask me some questions, but knowing Brent and I, it'll probably be some banter back and forth and be a lot of fun, and glad you get to sit in and enjoy it over these next, 20 to 30 minutes. So anyway, Brent, thanks for joining me today and being a part of this. I think it's going to be a wonderful time. I love the questions you've put together. Don't know that I have all the answers, but it'll be all right exploring it.
Well, I mean, you've had so many great people at this table the last several weeks, and so it's a real delight just to be able to sit down and ask you some questions now, flip the script, and kind of see where your thoughts are on some things. Since I've been at MercyGate now for 9.5 years, one of the things that has been of great value and just really one of the strong suits of your leadership has been the way you teach and promote, build leadership in your team. Yeah. And not just on your staff, but on council members, serve team members. That's a high value to you. Qualities of a great leader that you would name would be being a big picture person, being a great communicator, a person of self-discipline. But I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about what it means to be a visionary and a leader, and also how to be a person of action.
Sure.
And because sometimes a person will have great ideas, and just be a person that is a dream a minute, and maybe that's you. That are listening to this, but what, in your mind, what's the difference in being a visionary and being a leader?
Well, let's take the definition that John Maxwell uses for leadership. He said leadership is influence. Another definition of leadership I really like is agitating people toward movement at a rate that they can endure. I like that, that definition. And so, but there's a lot of people that coalesce around a vision to get it moving forward. It's not just one leader. It's like, I think team concept is huge. I think partners who come along, but someone has got to be able to see the picture. It's like when you put a puzzle together, it's really easy to put a puzzle together, no matter if it's 100 piece or 5,000 piece. If you have the box with the picture on it, if you lose that picture, putting that puzzle together may never happen. And so often we want to put pieces of puzzles together as leaders, but we don't have a vision, a picture of what it's going to look like. So a visionary is a person who sees the picture, paints the picture, put others in the picture, and then gathers leaders around them, people that use their influence to bring the picture to come to life.
Okay, this is a question I sometimes ponder, because there's so many great leaders on the scene, on the world scene.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just name them corporately, the people that are moving really the societal needle. And many of them aren't believers.
Right.
But why is it important to bring God into your visioneering? And how is it different from a leader who doesn't know the Lord?
I think it's about, on the surface, I don't even like the question.
Yeah.
Because okay. I think what it comes down to is what is pushing forward values serving the greater good of people. Whether you know the Lord or you don't know the Lord, is your vision serving the greater good of other people? I was watching a video last night, and and it was like a 7 to 10 minute little video. And it was of a guy who's made a huge world of difference in about, 1.3 billion kids around the world. I don't know where he stands with the Lord. Okay. Yeah. But when I heard his vision to raise the educational level and stop hunger in a lot of these third world countries, the good he was doing, I could get behind that. I could support that. Yeah. And his vision was very articulate and very clear. Now, if you're a person of faith, 100%, I think you need to bring God into the equation. And hopefully you'll get to this other question. If you don't, I'm going to bring the question up myself. I think sometimes people are paralyzed, especially in our brand of faith. They get paralyzed of wanting to find the will of God, that they don't even move forward on anything. They sit paralyzed with this idea instead of, look, figure out where you're at, take what you have right now, what is going to do the best good for humanity and others, and get busy doing that.
Yeah. Okay. See, I agree with that, and I like where you're going with it. It's easy as a believer to, I don't know if I necessarily like this term, but super spiritualize everything, because God uses a plethora of people to move his idea forward.
Yeah, I would actually call it, I think sometimes we lean into the arena of superstition more than we do spiritual when it comes to the will of God. I read a book years ago, Chasing Daylight.
Yeah.
Before it was Chasing Daylight, it had a different title. Can't remember what it was. And I read the first origination of that book. And on page 42 and 43 of that book, it absolutely revolutionized my thinking. And this was a phrase that was said in those pages. It says, if Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Karl Marx did not mess up the will of God in the earth, how can one of God's kids who are pursuing his heart mess up the will of God in the earth? Get busy doing good. That helped me. That set me, all kinds of way of free, because oftentimes I was so paralyzed to do what I knew to do, waiting on a sign, a voice, a lightning, thunder, something, because that was kind of the realm I grew up in, instead of like, no, you know what, I can do good here. I can advance the cause of Christ in this conversation or at this moment or this meeting. And so that really helped me, because what I learned was I grew up driving my dad called it 3 on the tree, okay? It was a 1969 Chevrolet 396 Corvette motor inside the truck, but it had 3 on the tree. The power steering was here and here, which didn't have much power. But when that truck was moving, it was easy to steer.
Yeah.
When that truck was parked, man, it's like you were standing on the steering wheel to turn the front wheels just so you could get going. Well, I find believers are that way. People are that way. Leaders at times can be that way, that they have no power steering because they're not willing to move.
Yeah.
And they don't move, and if we're going to be honest, they're not moving because I'm really seeking the will of God. They're not moving because they're so afraid to fail, or they're so afraid to quote unquote miss God that they don't do anything. And once you get going, it's easier to steer. And I think sometimes God is like, hey, if you get going, I'll steer you in the right direction. But it's kind of hard to get you to do anything if you're not even getting off top dead center. You're not moving at all.
Yeah. And there's a lot of marketplace leaders too. And I don't know how to really explain it, but I mean, you and I both know there's some people that have their secular life and their spiritual life. And so
which is not biblical at all.
At all. And so when it comes to their marketplace leadership, it's sometimes almost foreign, because this isn't religious, is it spiritual? I can't really, include God in this thing. But how does a marketplace leader, how does a person who is a visioneering kind of person, an idea person, how do they become, what's the difference between being a visionary leader and an action-oriented leader? How do you bridge those two?
I think for a Jesus follower, someone of faith, period, I think what would help everyone in life, culture, society, especially if you're a person of faith, is get rid of religious, get rid of secular, and implement the word kingdom.
Yeah.
And see the principles and the actions of the kingdom in everything that we do. So when I say doing good, what I'm wanting to know is what I'm doing on my job. Am I advancing the kingdom? What I'm doing in ministry, is it advancing the agenda of God, the principles of God's kingdom? Is it advancing do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Is it advancing that? And so often, because we have said this is secular, this is this, we think there's a different rule to each. Well, it's not. If you understand, Jesus didn't come to bring a new religion. He didn't come to bring a new idea. He came to bring a kingdom, to say, this is the way God approaches everything. Kingdom is not pie in the sky where we're going to be. It's an ecosystem that as believers, we should start flowing in and functioning in. Whether you're a school teacher, whether you're working in a chemical plant, whether you're an entrepreneur, or whether you're a pastor, pastoral staff, we have a responsibility to demonstrate and carry out the actions of the kingdom. That's why I think Jesus did 85% of his miracles outside of the synagogue. Because he was letting people know God's come to break out of what you think is spiritual and show you what spiritual really looks like in a very practical, pragmatic way.
See, and what you're talking about is one of our great values here at MercyGate, is practical, supernatural.
Yeah.
The Word of God tells us that we are his workmanship, or his handiwork, right? Created to do good works, which God has ordained for us to do in advance.
Yeah.
And I also like when the Word of God says that the calling of God is without repentance, which really means that, listen, your bent is going to flow out of you one way or the other.
Yeah, it is.
So have you ever known leaders who were people of action, but they were moving all over the place and going nowhere?
Oh, absolutely.
How can we avoid that?
I was that way.
Yeah, but there's a lot that they move one direction and they change and they go. The vision's great, but their GPS is all messed up.
Yeah, I think the Bible gives us a great picture of that. He says, write the vision, make it plain, so he who reads it can run with it. I think the difference between a great vision and great execution is the plan. What is, and when I say the plan, most people don't even know how to do a plan. They do a big idea. What is the step-by-step plan that we have to do to roll out to see this vision come to pass? Back to the puzzle illustration. When you get a puzzle and you lay out, let's say a 500-piece puzzle, what's the first things you start doing? You start going through all the pieces to find the corners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if I get my corners right, and then I can start to build my boundaries right, then I can start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I don't know why we don't do that with our lives and with the things of God. What we don't do is we don't find our corners. We don't find our boundaries. We just run around and play with all the pieces and say, I got this great vision. Come get it. And I'm like, time out. You kind of need a plan in how we're going to see this vision come to pass. It was funny in June 8, 2008. Okay. I gathered in a room with 35 people. We met for 2 days, and we came out of there. They said, Pastor John, that was a lot of fun. That was good, but we've done all this before, and we're not going. We just never get moving on the big ideas. So I know. I said, that's because you never had a plan. I said, but time I'm done, we'll have a plan, and we'll work the plan. And way too often we throw away the plan because it's not moving fast enough for us. because especially if you're a visionary, you want to see the vision come to pass. And you've got to learn to celebrate the steps along the way to see the vision come to pass.
Well, okay, with that, and that says a lot, because a lot of times when we have a vision, then we might find somebody that has done it, has a system or something like that. So we jump on that and we start moving on it. And then the next thing you know, we find another system that works a certain way, and it kind of moves that too. And so sticking with your plan, long term is key to success. One time I heard a person say, because you talked about paralyzing fear and uncertainties. One person said, if you can't do your best work, do your second best work, but either way, get moving. Do you agree with that? Why or why not?
I do agree with that. Because I don't think you're ever going to do your best work up first time.
Yeah.
I think you're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're going to develop. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, how often do you go back and preach old messages? I said, not too often, because I typically don't like them. And they're like, but they were so good. I said, yeah, but I've kind of grown since then. And if you still are in love with stuff you did 5 or 6 years ago, that says a lot about your stagnation of growth. And I heard John Maxwell say, he did a teaching for us one time, and it was so stupid good, but he made me mad at the end. He apologized, guys, I know that wasn't that good, because that's the first time I've done it. Next time you hear this, it's going to be better. And I'm like, there ain't no way. That was phenomenal. Well, I actually heard it when he did it the second time, and I watched it on video. He was right. It was better the second time. But he didn't wait till he just got great at it. He started where he was. Way too often, especially young leaders or leaders who've had some bumps and bruises along the way, I don't want to even start until I can do it my very best. And
you know me.
Yeah.
All right.
And so instead of, listen, you're going to get better, you'll do better. And I've kind of just, I guess it's where how I've grown up, how I've been, is that, man, I just do it at the level I can do it, knowing I'm going to grow. I'll get better.
Yeah. Well, like with me, and so I don't know if you were just talking and making points with those out there, if you were like taking a shot at me.
No, I was just answering your question.
But that's been one of my biggest deals is, forever is I want to make sure everything's in place, everything's excellent, so I could launch it with the least amount of errors in my mind. But no matter how good it is, there's going to be something that's going to fire off cylinder.
Absolutely.
And so it's great to get moving and then fix it along the way, because the idea is you've got to put some distance between where the vision started and where it's go.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for not just you, it's anybody that has that thought paradigm. The reality is they're not looking for excellence. They're actually looking for perfection. Until I know it's perfect, I'm not going to execute. Well, excellence and perfect are not the same.
No.
Perfect is an illusion that will never be grasped. You'll never grab a hold of perfect. But you can grab a hold of excellence, because excellence is doing it at the highest level that you possibly can where you're at.
Yeah.
And so excellence when I was at Freeport versus the excellence of where I am now is two different animals. But can I tell you something? If you would ask me, are you doing it at an excellent level? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing it at an excellent level? Yes. Are we perfect? No. The only person that was perfect was Jesus. They killed him, so why be perfect? They get you killed.
Okay. Well, okay, let's jump here, because one of my favorite people in the Bible is Joshua. And one of my favorite phrases in the book of Joshua is right at the very beginning, and it's just simply this: Moses, my servant, is dead.
Yep.
And so in chapter 1, verse 11, God tells Joshua, go possess the land.
Yeah.
So there's that word of go possess. You have to go make this happen.
Right.
I've given you something. You have to go take it. So do you ever find that there's marketplace leaders, visionary leaders that are kind of in a waiting game with God? And if so, how does this word to Joshua really apply to a marketplace leader? Hey, go possess the land.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that I think God gives you all the raw ingredients and says, put it together.
Yeah.
Where we want the baked cake to be delivered to us.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Even manna, whenever they got manna, the name manna is what is it? That's what it meant. It defined what is it. So they had to take the elements of manna, use those components to turn it into bread or pancakes or something else. And so whenever God tells Moses, or Joshua, here's the promise. Now you've got to execute, you got to walk into the promise. And the interesting thing, he uses the phrase, everywhere you put your feet, I'll give you the land.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Most people want the land without walking it out. Most people want the business without walking it out. Most people want the perfect marriage without walking it out. Most people want excellent kids without walking it out. They want magic, not a miracle. In other words, they want to sit on the sideline and watch God do it all and go, wow. And they just go in and picked up the cake and the perfect marriage and the perfect kids. And the reality is, that's not even biblical. That's not Jesus. That's just weird. God wants us to say, here's the land. Now you've got to walk it out. You've got to walk it out and possess it. You got to lay hold of it. I'll give you the picture. I'll give you the territory. It's yours. But now you got to put action to it. And I think that, go back to visioneering, go back to a dream. There's different stages of a dream. And I have people I'll walk in and share ideas with. I'll bounce the dream off of, and they're dreamers. I love dreaming with dreamers. That's so much fun. Then I have 2 or 3 people that I'll take my dream to after I have fully formulated it, because what I know is after I get through with my conversation with them, my dream's going to look like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
It's going to have holes all in it.
Well, I bring people into my world that will poke holes in my.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have to know where is this not going to happen. But that doesn't mean I give up on the dream. It means you go back and you relook at the vision, you relook at the dream, because one, I'm going to possess the dream. I'm going to lay hold of it. But I do realize that it's not perfect right now. It's not complete right now. And I shared this last week when I was speaking in Florida. And I said, I've always taken the idea of go to get a no. Because most people are just waiting. They're waiting. And what did God tell Joshua? He said, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Go and possess the land. Mm-hmm. In other words, go until you get a no.
Yeah. Well, and so both of us, I cut my teeth on church pews. Okay. So I have this frustration sometimes with church people. Sure. Because church people and a lot of times church leaders have this door theology, and they wait for a door to be opened. But, the devil opens doors. But but when I think about that, I think about some people hesitate because they don't know what action to take. And actions define what you're depending on for life.
Yes.
And Joshua was known as a man with a different spirit.
Right.
Joseph was known as a person with whom the Spirit of God dwelt.
Right.
Pharaoh and Potiphar noticed it. God noticed it with Joshua. The people noticed it.
Yeah.
How does the Holy Spirit in a person affect their leadership and their drive? Do you understand what I mean by that question?
I do. I'm going to actually preach on that in 2 weeks, but this is tough.
Well, because
Let me put this real bluntly. Most people don't need the Holy Spirit to do what they're doing. We have the presence of God to do hard things, to do difficult things, to do challenging things. Most people don't need God's help to live out their life and to do the plan they've had their life. But if God ever gets a hold of you, God gives you a promise so big that you know I can't do it without him. There's this reliance on him and a knowing that you know I can't do this without him. And you get to a point where I don't want to do it without him. But I'm not paralyzed to take a move until I've, get a doodad, a goosebump, a wind, or whatever. Sometimes it's just laid out. Do it. There's a great scripture, man. It's 1 Corinthians 16:9, I think is it. And I may be off on my translation or my address on it. But in the NIV, Paul says this. He said, there's a great effectual open unto me, but there are many adversaries. Now, interesting word about that word effectual means it's a door that needs to be kicked in. Mm-hmm. So you go back to if God wants me to walk through it, he'll open the door. Where's that in the Bible?
Thank you.
It's not, the plan of God is not easy. The plan of God, the things of God are not easy. If anybody could do it, they would. They don't. And so Paul's saying there is a grace, there's an effectual there, but I want you to know there's a lot of things that are against me. There's a lot of adversaries that are against me. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. And we live in a culture where people don't want to do hard things. They don't want to do difficult things. And you've heard me tell the story when I was getting ready to go to Bible school. If it could go wrong, it went wrong. From my car breaking down to, early on money not coming through, just the things. But I just knew I need to go to Bible school. I knew it. And a guy told me, I took my radiator to get fixed, and he said, Donald, I've been watching you for the last 30 days. You've been having a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties. I said, yeah. I said, and this is one of them. And he said, well, have you thought because of all the problems, maybe God doesn't want you to go to Bible school? And I'm like, well, have you thought God wants you to pay for my radiator so I can go to Bible school? And so, it just frustrated me, and I'm just like, that's so not Bible. Nowhere in the Bible do you see that. You don't have, to possess something, you go in and possess the land, Joshua. Possess is such it's such an aggressive word. It's such a strong word. Why do I got to lay hold of it, seize it, grab hold of it, possess it, if it's just easy?
Well, the first thing they came up to was Jericho.
Yeah.
Big walls, big fortified city, gates. And the whole idea was to aggressively take this. Their aggressiveness was in obedience.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, okay, you've used some words through our time together today that I want to go back and revisit. Okay, so let's call them action stoppers. Okay, all right. So let's talk about some things that would keep you from taking action. And the first one I want to talk about is, or have you address, is feelings of inadequacy. Because sometimes, and I think this a lot of times, that sometimes visioneering type people aren't always the most confident people. But how does feelings of inadequacy, how can those be overcome to get you moving?
I think you have to do it afraid. I don't know that. Here's the thing. Inadequacy is a big word to unpack. Feelings of inadequacy are something completely different. So you have to ask yourself, is the feeling true or is it a lie? So if the feelings, I'm feeling inadequate and it's true, then I need more information, I need more resources, or I need more people around me to compensate where I'm inadequate.
Yeah.
Because no man's an island. You're not going to get there by yourself. You got to have the right people on the team. Okay. You've heard the phrase self-made man. If they're a self-made man, they haven't made much. They need other people around them, other information, maybe even a book.
The turtle or fence post.
Yeah, turtle on fence post. Didn't get there by himself. And so if you're looking and you're examining the feelings and they're not true, you have to do it afraid. I have lived all my life over my head. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's funny. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I shouldn't confess that, but I don't. But I'm not afraid to go search it out, research it, find it. It was funny. I did a deal for 3 years, and at the end of it, we're supposed to say something to one another that was in this cohort group. And I'm sitting there just wrestling with, okay, what do I say? What's going to be said about me? They're finally going to see all my inadequacies. I'm just nervous. And this one guy looked at me, he said, what I've learned in the last 3 years is there is nothing Donald can't do. Donald, whatever you want to do in future of your life, you can do it. And he has no idea how contrary that is to the way I feel most of the time. And, but I've learned, do it afraid.
Yeah.
Because the feelings will lie to you. What it was it? It's an acronym for fear, but I won't even get into it. But feelings will lie to us. And so you have to just either bring the right people, the right information, or even the right time that will help you with your inadequacy to begin to move forward.
Well, I like the way you defined it too. Either it's something that is a reality, you're inadequate, or it's a lie, and you just... So I like the way you juxtapose those two.
Yeah. Fear, false echoes appearing real.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because sometimes what happens, inadequacy usually comes from a failure somewhere in our past, and now it becomes an echo. And an echo is a residual effect of a past sound, experience, or event.
Well, inadequacies can cause you to go two directions. They can either make you be arrogant.
Yes.
Or they can reveal your humility.
100%. That's so good.
I heard a person say once that the definition of humility is remembering and realizing that God and others are responsible for the accomplishments in your life.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of just the greatest definitions of that, because it put things in perspective.
Yeah.
Especially, for me personally. Let's move on. There's another one too that keeps us from taking actions, and it's the fear of the unfamiliar. You mentioned a while ago that sometimes we fall in love with the old plan.
Yeah.
It's worked because it's familiar, but it's the unfamiliar that sometimes it paralyzes us.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I think the unfamiliar always paralyzes anybody unless they're just super adventurous.
Yeah. X Games.
Yeah. Because, unfamiliar places, unfamiliar people, unfamiliar experiences bring up all these fears of, I don't know, so I'm uncomfortable. And everybody wants, we always talk about, you got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort zone. But when you're unfamiliar, you're way out of your comfort zone. You know what I'm saying? And so you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's most guys will get off of the train right there.
Well, you just went on a big hunting trip.
Yeah.
In a place with which you were very unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And a type of hunting of which you were pretty much unfamiliar.
I've never done before in my life.
But you had a guide who was outrageously familiar.
Yeah.
And could even tell you where to aim to hit your target.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing that when you have a vision and a goal and you're putting a plan together, that you can find people who have done it and are familiar and can tell you where to act.
Yeah. I think you have to. I heard, I think you have to find people who are where you want to be.
Yes.
And learn from them.
True.
But at the same time, I heard this story a while back. A great leader I really respect and look up to. But they made the comment they were about to do a television program, and they had this series of leaders that were coming on one after the other. And this one guy come on and he said, they said, "What's your philosophy of leadership?" He said, "Never be the first one to eat the mushroom." And they're like, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, mushrooms can kill people or mushrooms can feed people. Never be the first guy to eat the mushroom. You got to look at the crowd, see who ate the mushroom first." Well, the guy that I really, really love is sitting off stage watching this guy do this. And so he gets on the platform, and they greet one another cordially as they pass. And this guy comes on during the commercial, and now it's his turn. And they asked him, says, "What's your philosophy of leadership?" He said, "Well, I didn't know until today." He said, "Today I found out." And he goes, "Okay." He says, "I'm a mushroom eater. I'm the first one to eat the mushroom." And then they began to explore that. And they said, "Okay, why are you a mushroom eater?" He said, "Because I want to know if it works. I'm not afraid to take the risk." And here's the thing. I think every leader, right or wrong, I don't think either one of those guys were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some people's leadership, they're not a mushroom eater. They're not the first one to eat the mushroom. They got to let somebody else do it. And they see them do it. And then they're like, "Man, I'm going to take the best ideas, the best practices, all of those things from them, and then I'm going to do it." Others are like, "I'll go. I'm not, let's take the risk. Let's jump." And I think it depends on what it is. I can be one of both at times.
Yeah, it's good. I don't know. I think you're probably a mushroom eater. I think, yeah. So
yeah, probably.
So let's talk about eating mushrooms. Let's talk about taking action. All right. If you're going to take action, here's a few things I wrote down. You can comment on them. First off, break down your plan into some small steps.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because sometimes if you're a good leader, you're going to have a big vision.
Yes.
But that sometimes can overwhelm.
And you have to process those steps with some other people. Yeah. Don't do that in a silo. Don't do that alone. I had a meeting the other day with somebody. We're having a conversation, and they took what they thought were small steps. And I said, "Can I take your step and make it smaller?" They're like, "Okay, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Okay, you're at the top of the heap in your organization, right?" They're like, "Yeah." I said, "I want you to write down the 6 things only you can do in your company. And then I want you to process that with 2 people. Because there's things you think only you can do that really somebody else can do, but you think you're the only one can do. I said, I live in that world. I get it." And they're like, "But I need to do that." I said, "No, you don't." I said, "Because what you're going to become real fast is a hamster in the wheel because you haven't broken down the process enough to say, you know what? This is really the only 3 or 4 or 5 things I need to do. These other folks can really run with that."
It's good.
And so, but because they're the owner of the companies, they, actually there's several ministries, they felt like they had to be, let's do this step, let's do this step, let's do this step first. And I was telling them, no, you need to break it down even smaller, And sometimes, to answer that question, you're 100% right. You got to break down the plan into smaller steps, but do you really know what those steps are? So like when I build a 5-page, a 5-year plan, I break it down to what we need to do this year to get us there in 5 years. But then I break it all the way down. What do we need to do this quarter to see these 1-year goals met, to see this 5-year goal met? And sometimes the 1-year goal doesn't seem like it's tied to the 5-year goal because you don't see the other pieces in year 2, 3, and 4 that have to take place.
Truth.
Yeah. And so when you're breaking that plan down to small steps and you're the visionary leader, you've got to keep in mind that these other things they're going to happen. They just may need to happen in year 3, not year 1. Year 1, this is what's going to be important.
That's good. Well, you talk about in breaking things down. There's in taking action. Then the next thing would be to what small step can you take today? What's an action step you can take today to get the ball rolling? And that might go back to the fact that I've got to wait till everything's perfect before I launch. But there needs to be something that you're doing today to get that vision rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what that vision is. Corey and I this morning were having a conversation about habits. He's been teaching students about habits. Mm-hmm. I said, well, son, you know how you change a habit? And he goes, no. I said, you got to change your routines. If they don't change their routine, you'll never change a habit. Most people don't change their goals because they don't change their habits because they never address their routines. The routines is what you do daily that form your habits, which influence your goals. Yeah. So if, it's the guy who has a cheat day that turns into a cheat week to a cheat month to a cheat year. And now, why am I, out of shape again? Because I cheated one day that went into others. So you have to keep your routines. And your routines have got to work for you. You can't work for your routines. So when you're looking at this, you got to look at the steps today to get the ball rolling, not the big things. What's the routine step that I can take today? For some people, it might be finally put the vision on a piece of paper, write it down so it stops changing.
Sure.
And then share it with somebody who will dream with you.
That was the next thing.
Believe and celebrate it with you.
Yeah, meet with one person. Share your goal or dream with somebody. Get some, but another thing that will derail you and just cause you not to move forward so that to get action, you get some momentum is to distance from distractions, and because visionary leaders are also people that have high demands on them a lot of times.
Sure.
And so those things can distract you from things that need to go.
When you say, I like the language distant from distractions, but I would say don't be detoured by distractions. Distractions are coming.
Yeah.
Bank on them. They're coming your way. Don't be detoured because of a distraction. Don't be detoured because of a failure or a setback. Too many people allow a distraction to detour where they're going, a distraction to detour the vision, sometimes completely change the vision. And what I hate in the church world is more than anything, and I wish people wouldn't even do it, God told me. Because they make God to be schizophrenic. Because 3 months later, God's telling them something else. I'm like, whoa. I thought you said God said this. Well, usually what happens is it was a good idea that they didn't think through. They got distracted and got a better offer, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so we play this God card all the time, which just, it's just a pet peeve of mine, where people become super spiritual in it and just simply saying, you know what, I got distracted. I got detoured. And own that because one of the biggest, another message, and I'll do it later, but we think about the parable of the talents, okay? In the parable of the talents, the master gives the guy 5, the guy 2, the guy 1. You ever notice he didn't tell him what to do with it? Yeah. He just says, be responsible. We don't want the responsibility of our talent. We don't want the responsibility of our vision. We don't want the responsibility of our dreams. So what we do is we cast it back on God.
It's good. Yeah. Responsibility. Well, God doesn't give vision without responsibility.
100%.
You know, there's vision. Sometimes vision serves, for some people, just serves the component of making them feel good about themselves. And that's never why God gives you vision. They'll use the vision for validity.
Yeah. And that's,
but it's really to move this portion of his kingdom ahead. And so that's, when we were talking about Joseph, I was thinking God used two very evil people to put Joseph in position to put his kingdom plan in a momentum shift.
Someone asked me this morning, they sent me a text. They said, why don't we know much about Moses's childhood and his early life after he was rescued out of the river? I said, because it's not important.
Yeah.
I said, what happens to you and what you encounter in your childhood isn't as important as what do you do with it and how do you reframe it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I said, when you look at what happened in Moses's life, it didn't matter where he started, it's where you finish.
True.
Well, when you look at, and I love the two people that you pick out, Joseph, his brothers are against him. He's got all kinds of hardships and difficulties and challenges, but he never let that set him back. He ends up becoming second in the kingdom and does it all for his family. We look at Joshua, he wandered around for 40 years with a bunch of boneheads.
Yeah.
But he still served as leader. He learned, he grew, he developed. And then when it was his turn, he said, we're going forward. Let's go. And so I think so many times, instead of people taking what has happened to us and maybe even evil people where you worked for on a job or whatever, that we don't take that as fuel. We take it as an excuse. Responsibility says, you know what, I'm going to use this to fuel my future, not to send me back into failure and to setback.
You mentioned people that you're working for.
Yeah.
Joseph was successful because he viewed his place was in making Potiphar successful.
100%.
Was in making Pharaoh successful. It was less about him.
Yeah.
It was more about what was happening in the place. The last thing with being in action, a person of action, is find celebration partners.
Yeah, that's so good.
Find people that will celebrate this vision with you.
I like that.
With you.
I think that's huge. And I think that's where, we were talking about earlier, who do you take the vision to first?
Yeah.
In its infancy, when it's actually not even a vision yet, it's a good idea. And actually, it's just a spark of an idea. You remember the old cartoon, they get an idea and it's a little light bulb that pops up. Sometimes what we think is a fully formulated vision is actually just a light bulb. When a vision is in its infancy, you have to be so careful who you take it to. Now, I have a person in my world, in my life, on our team, not on staff, but here on our team at the church. They do both for me. They punch holes in my vision, but they'll dream with me too. But I tell them what I need. So I sit down with them and I say, hey, I need you to dream with me right now. For the next 30 minutes, all I want you to do is dream with me. And early on, they weren't as good at it. Now they're really good at it. They just dream and they're like, this, we could do this, we could do this, like this, and I'll take a drink of tea or something. I'm like, okay, now where's all the holes at? Bam, 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 bam. But because I got them to dream with me, they have already actually started finding solutions for the holes in the middle of the dreaming. So who dreams with you is critical to celebrate, along the way. It just fuels you.
Yeah, it's good to find people too who necessarily don't think the same way you do.
Oh yeah,
but can celebrate the dream.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this was good. I've loved this.
Well, man, thank you. It's different being on this side, being asked all the questions, but hopefully we help some people today, and it's kind of fun because we have to do this often. Open up so many things.
Well, that's what we do. He comes right in and plops down in my office and says, hey, I was thinking this, or I thought this. But today, there's some of you out there that you have a dream or you have a vision in your business. You have a next step that you're thinking of. And maybe there's a feeling of inadequacy. Maybe there's some unfamiliar and some fear. But I hope today, just talking, hearing some of the things that Pastor had to say and share, fuels you to go after it and not give up and go to the next level in what you're doing.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for joining us Beyond the Table. I think we've given you some stuff today really to take beyond the table and to work out and to be an encouragement to you. And thank you, Brent, for hanging out a little bit.
Thanks for having me come.
See you next time.